There's a new initiative that's being talked about in communities around the city where, especially on a campus, for example, Lecture is an example where you could do this. There are systems where you can kind of build an enclosed structure that's semi-underground and that is semi-sealed, and that can be a way where that garbage is managed. And I may be using the wrong word, but I know that this is a concept that's being looked at for suitable locations, and particularly a campus structure such as NYCHA might be one of the places where this might be done.
Does anyone at NYCHA want to speak to that?
So the only thing I can tell you for New York City Housing Authority, the caretakers for the last 2 years to the young lady, they've been on the AWS schedule, so that was staggered staff. So you might have 5 caretakers coming in on the 6 o'clock a.m. shift. They will actually work in 10-hour shifts. So there's some days that they didn't have no coverage. I'm not for sure how many trucks Kingsborough is operating. I did see the garbage out there today. The borough administrator for that development is here, so she hears what you're saying, so she can take that back to her development tomorrow morning. But effective this Sunday, we the last borough to go off the AWS shift. They already did Bronx, they did Manhattan, they did Queens, they did Staten Island. So we're going back to the 8 to 4:30 shift, and they're working 8-hour days, and Saturday and Sundays will be covered fully with staff. So staff will be held accountable for their buildings. Right now, even with bringing out the garbage in the building, is staggered because they don't have the manpower. And with that said, we asked the residents to work with us through NYCHA also, because I've walked numerous buildings and they're like tons of garbage just in the hallway. The caretakers can move the garbage at 9 o'clock in the morning, and before 10:30, you got garbage throughout the building again. And not only is it a safety issue, it becomes a fire hazard. So we put letters under the resident door, hoping that they can be in compliance and work with us also. Okay?
And we're also looking into purchasing tilt trucks, which was a big container to contain the garbage that has to go out on the outside. Kingsborough does not have an exterior compactor, so we have drop sites. So they go on the street. Unfortunate.
How you doing? My name is Rick Jones, longtime Crown Heights resident. I wanted to ask, is there like a link between different departments? Because the rats didn't come from nowhere. They came from housing development. So I know it's charged of issuing out permits. I don't know if y'all can raise the fees, because when they're knocking, especially like Bedside and Crown Heights, when they're doing the interior of the brownstones, they're knocking down the walls. And that's where the rodents were living. And so when you're doing all this construction, that's where they're letting loose all over the place. That's why there's such an abundance of more of them all over the neighborhood. So I don't know if there's a bridge between housing, development, Department of Health and Sanitation that can help mitigate and also facilitate money-wise resources that help these problems. Because if you're not going to be a joint effort, everybody's just passing the buck on it. So we can't say this like it's the Department of Health's issue for rats, but the genesis of rats are coming from construction. So who's, checking construction, so for fees and budgets, so facilitate that. Who's putting, traps around construction areas. And after a while, because while I lived on Union, after you starve them a while, they're going to still be here, and they turn to cannibalism and start killing each other. They're going to still be all over the place, because I had it when I lived on Union in Franklin. Department of Health came and basically shook up the whole block. So while you're driving, you think you see a car run over a rodent. That rodent was eaten because there was no food around it. So I think there needs to be a bridge between each department to help facilitate from it, and it starts with that construction. As far as like, with the, containers, they're fine, but the rodents will still be running all over the place now. So, I don't know if there is a link between each other for that, or y'all been working on that. But I think that is a big remedy to help alleviate the situation. Okay, thank you.
HPD and Department of Health work very closely together, just so you know. There's the Rat Academy. We have 3 classes, both DOH and HPD, training people. You can find them on both our websites. It's called Integrated Pest Management, because the only way you actually solve the problem of rodents and roaches is they eat what you eat and they drink what you drink, right? They drink water, they eat food. They, as long as they can access harborage, somewhere to live, if you don't seal up the holes, if you're still providing water, if there's water pooling anywhere, if there's water dripping consistently, water's not cleaned up, if food isn't being, and garbage aren't being kept away from where the rodents and roaches are, you will constantly have roaches. You will constantly have rodents and roaches.
No,
So,
I understand that.
yeah.
What I'm saying, if the genesis of it is from a lot of construction. Inside the walls, like these plastic walls have these metal frames inside of them. And that's where the rats lived at. For years. So, while everybody's knocking those walls down to put up, cheap sheetrock and fiberglass, they're out, they're leaving. We're taking away their homes.
Pam, do you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this is a DOD question, but is there any type of local law that exists that requires developers or construction workers to, put in place poison or traps during construction or after construction, or does that not exist?
I'm not aware.
So again, like I previously mentioned, right? So once you buy a property, it's the property owner's responsibility to make sure that if there's rat activity, they respond to it. And again, as the health department, we won't come into a situation until it's not handled. So we give the owner an opportunity to make sure like they get it exterminated on their own expense to solve the issue. But if the community keeps complaining that there's new construction going up and no one is containing the garbage, or no one is attending to the rat situation that's going on, that's when we come in and then we assign a commissioner's order to abate. And if they don't answer it, we do another compliance, and then that's when we go in and actually exterminate and then bill. So we have to give them like a chance. And unfortunately, to go back to your initial question, I think your question was, is there a way to kind of like regulate the type of construction, the continuous construction that's going on in these communities? I can't speak on that because I'm not the Department of Buildings, but I know they're the one who give out permits, right?
So that's what I mean, you have to
go
have
up.
this link between each other. Because, a lot of these are big corporations now that are doing the development.
Yeah.
So, who are you gonna pinpoint?
Unless the construction workers, and this is a real issue, unless the construction workers are leaving food on the job site, which can happen, rats and mice and roaches go where food is.
But you're not understanding. Once these walls, these plastic walls, I'm a person that works in construction, infrastructure, everything. The rats are in the walls. Look at these brownstones, that's where they live at. So when you're knocking these things down, you're removing their home. So it's not like, they're leaving their food and then the rats are coming. From the construction site, the rats are leaving, trying to find shelter. And that's why they're all over here, all over the place. And that's what I'm talking about as far as the housing, the developers, they need to be charged more and surcharges for, preventing, rodents being spread all over the place. Once they knock those walls down, they're all over the place. And I think that's a good idea. Now, the second question I had about transportation, which has become a